welcome to this week's Ask Us Anything. Tom, who's Activities Manager, will be joining us shortly, and we've got Liv here with us as well, who's VP Activities, and I'm Emily, the Assistant Student Activities Manager. So if you have any questions, just pop them in the chat, and we've got a few from Instagram as well that we can answer, but we'll start off first with the one in the chat. So we've got, hi, I wanted to ask what extent is the Guild working with the university to try and allow societies to use university rooms and run events on campus despite the COVID-19 restrictions? Do you want to explain them a bit of the meetings you've been in, because you've been in a lot of meetings at the uni?
Yeah. So what I do know is the university have been, I can hear myself, they've been asking us what rooms we'll need to be using from September. So that's all I know so far. What I do know is there's a meeting going on next week with myself, Rachel Windsor, I believe, from the university, and Mark, who works for, as part of our facilities team, to talk about our needs and what provisions we'll need for September. So we are definitely working with the university, but I can't confirm right now what spaces they will be offering for society activity, but I know they'll definitely be putting provisions in place.
Yeah, and the activities team are going to be releasing some information next week about starting to submit freshers events. So we're going to start with digital ones, and then we'll let you know when to expect more information about physical events. Your question asked about the extent. We're working very closely with the university. They are having to confirm what rooms they're using first, and then they'll release any rooms that they do have to us. We don't know what those will be at the moment, what that will look like, but it's taken a lot longer than it would normally just because of the number of things they have to check, such as ventilation, room size, that kind of thing. Does that answer your question? Cool. So if you have any other questions, just pop them in the chat, but I'll go through some of the ones we've had on Instagram. So, question 1. Will there be socials and will masks be compulsory? So there will still be socials if society decides to run socials. Whether they'll be physical or virtual will depend on the circumstances. There definitely will be virtual socials, and we'll be asking societies to have a think about what they could do, as well as helping give them ideas such as how to do an online quiz. What were the other suggestions that you had, Liv, in your society in isolation? I can't remember now.
I'm trying to think. Yeah, just I mean, like online fitness classes and all that sort of thing. I need to watch back, actually. There was the Student Opportunities Festival, obviously, going on last week. I think on Saturday they did 101 online events.
Yes.
I need to have a watch of that and put out some ideas. I could not think of 101 online events, so we'll be interested to see what they come up with.
Yeah. And then in terms of masks, again, that's on government guidance. Obviously, at the moment, if you're on public transport, you need to wear a mask, but there's nothing compulsory necessarily about inside spaces that are 2 meters apart. Obviously, if it's 1 meter, there is kind of the expectation that other measures need to be put in place, which may be a mask. But at this moment in time, it's very dependent on what the government guidelines say, whether it's mandatory that you wear a mask inside or whether it's not. So we'll update you with that one as soon as we know. The next question is, when exactly does freshers start and what are the measures taken due to Corona? So freshers is during what would be the normal week. So I think, just get my calendar up to check the date.
I don't know off the top of my head.
The 14th. So the 14th to the 20th is the week that freshers will be. When different events and stuff will be, we don't know yet. We know that students may arrive slightly earlier than that, so there may be the opportunity to do events before, but kind of the main week we're working towards for the main body of events is that week, and that's when academic inductions are also going to be. In terms of the measures taken due to Corona, so the university is currently reviewing all of its spaces and looking at what spaces are usable for what purposes. And then we're also looking at our spaces, so Devonshire House, etc., and how we can make those COVID secure. I don't think the university at the point of releasing information in exactly what that's going to look like yet, because they're still in the planning stages. But there'll be communications going out as soon as that's all confirmed. Don't know if you want to add anything else on that one, Liv?
No, I don't think so, really. I think just the fact that I know some students potentially think that everything is going to be online, and that's that's it, full stop. But I think obviously the government advice changes quite regularly, and we will have to follow that. But as long as both the university and guild are happy that events can be well risk assessed and things, we'll try as best as we can. I think to support any activity that goes on, especially for freshers, because we want everyone to have a really good week.
Yeah. Cool. We'll do the next couple of questions on Instagram, and then I'll come back to the one in the chat. So we've got, when is welcome week for postgrads with an October start? So postgrads are due to start around the 12th. That's when their course starts. We haven't got confirmed yet dates of when their welcome week will be, whether it'll be the same week before or after, but we'll announce that on the 13th of August on our Freshers Hub, along with everything else freshers-wise for new students. And if students want to find out more beforehand or get the announcements first, they can sign up to the mailing list or join the Facebook group that's linked on the Freshers Hub. And then the final question from Instagram is, how are you planning to have freshers events with all the current restrictions? So kind of as we described before, we're still in very much the planning processes. We're asking societies to think about the digital events they're going to run and what they can run digitally. Obviously, there's not really many limits on that, on how many you can run, what you can run, apart from the constraints of what can be done digitally. In terms of physical, we're going to give you updates in the next couple of months. But the university is currently doing their space review. And then once we have that, we can then say what activities can go ahead, what spaces are available, that kind of thing. Is there anything you want to add to that, Tom or Liv? No?
No, I don't think so.
Tom?
No, not for me.
Cool. So got a question in the chat. What support is the Guild planning to put in place for societies that are unable to run their core activity as they normally would, e.g. music groups, contact sports, even though they can run other online but unrelated activities? Does anyone want to take that question?
Yeah, I'm happy to take that on. So it's quite a hard question to answer at the moment, considering we're still unsure that we're unsure of what the restrictions are going to be on campus and what the restriction on spaces is going to be on campus. We are looking into potential alternatives, but again, this is being delayed by the basic fact that the university is having to review all of their spaces at the moment and look into what the requirements are for each space and what the room capacity is going to be and that kind of thing. So in terms of support, we're still working on a lot of our resources, focusing on how you can engage members online, how you can engage them through different events and things. We actually had a group called Organised Fun ran the Student Opportunities Festival last week, and there are some really good, really engaging sessions that have been recorded on how to engage members online, how to run online events, like new ideas for online events, that kind of thing as well. For groups that potentially, for where it isn't necessarily their sort of core activity or what they would normally be doing, if they can't run their core activity, there isn't a lot we're necessarily going to be able to do whilst they're unable to run that activity. But what we are focusing on is what kind of activity we can, how we can support societies restarting once they can run their core activity again. So we are looking to, once restrictions are lifted, potentially running more physical Freshers Week activities. So running a second Freshers Week potentially with societies and supporting societies to encourage members getting involved. In terms of memberships and things, we're looking at options at the moment to support societies financially while they may not be able to ask for money from members because they aren't providing value for money for that membership. So we're looking into ways that we can support them in doing that in still running some sort of activity, but with no membership income, and then again supporting them to replace that membership income once their core activity can continue again. Unfortunately, it's not the answer we want. It's there isn't a lot of we don't have a lot of information at the moment, but we are looking at supporting groups through online activity and how they can restart once normal activity resumes.
Cool. Do you want to add anything on top of that, Liv?
No, I don't think so.
No. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So thank you very much.
That's all right. If you have any other questions, either just say them or pop them in the chat.
Sorry, I just had a slight coughing fit. Don't have corona. I'll put some orange in my drink and it was just a bit too citrusy.
Couldn't handle it. Well, it doesn't look like we have any other questions. Is there anything anyone wants to talk about? Trying to think.
I'm trying to think what's going on at the moment. A lot.
Emily, do you want to run down the kind of most recent stuff we released on training and what's coming up in the next week or so?
Handy. Let me just get it up so I can see. So this week we released training on finance. So it looked at kind of what the financial account looks like and the responsibilities on that. And then what we're doing is we're following up next week with 2 more finance sessions. So one on budgeting, how to budget, different types of budgets that you can do, and then one on the processes, so how you access your society account in terms of paying money in, paying money out, and all the different processes we have around that. Tomorrow we've got a grant application session where we're going to look at how to write a good grant application. So that's going to involve looking at kind of tips for writing them, what things to include, and then we've got some examples to go through to kind of say which one works best, what can we do to change the application to make sure it's successful. Trying to think if there's anything else on training. Alongside the ones next week, we're going to run a drop-in where you can ask questions about finances, because we know it's quite a hard topic with things like VAT and how that affects your society. So look out for next week for a finance Q&A. I think it's going to be on Thursday, and you can ask us any questions you have about the sessions that we put out. Yeah, I don't know if you've got anything else to add on that, Tom.
No, that's great. Thanks, Emily. Yeah, it's just kind of to reiterate, we'll be releasing finance sessions. We'll be releasing new training sessions regularly, and look out for the sessions that go along with that. So this week it's the grant writing session, and then the finance Q&A next week for that as well. So come and ask us any questions about finance that you might have.
Were there any interesting student ops festival sessions you went to?
Oh, I can't even remember what I went to now.
Only my note to. I went to the one with she's Britain's youngest MP, Nadia.
Yeah.
That was really good. And I went to one that was sabbatical officer focused, but I really want to try some of the watch back the activities ones.
Yeah, I went to a few. I didn't make it to all of them because I forgot, like they crossed over with meetings. So I went to one about fundraising, which was really interesting. It's basically talking about kind of the future of fundraising. So like rather than the big challenges that charities usually do, such as like climbing Killy, massive marathons, they were talking about doing real world experiences that are captured digitally and then fundraising with those. So like Tom Moore's walking challenge, things like that people do every day. So you could do like 10,000 steps a day for a month, or some people have been doing like game-a-thons where they game for 24 hours and stuff like that and raising money. So that was quite interesting because it's kind of a different way to fundraise and you can do it digitally as well. And the person who ran the session was the CEO of Give Penny, whose website basically is kind of geared up for that. Yeah, and then some ones about the way different student media work. So there was different media coordinators from across the country, and it's quite interesting to see kind of how different unions work because they all work completely differently to each other, even though they're kind of trying to achieve the same thing. And then also a really interesting talk on how student radio had managed to change their broadcasting to be from home, and kind of how they did that on a smaller scale compared to how the global companies have done it. And then I went also to the one on allyship, so looking at kind of creating safe spaces, not always asking people who are from a minority like to explain things, to share their experiences, because it can get tiring, it can give diversity fatigue, but also kind of giving people the space to giving them the space that they don't ordinarily have to share their views and stuff, and just ensuring people can share their experiences and needs, listen to people's questions and stories, and also making spaces accessible. So that was quite an interesting one, how a lot of people won't join societies because of the types of events they run. So thinking about, for example, if you run an event at a pub, even though you can have a soft drink, it's still very alcohol orientated. So if someone is either anxious about that situation or has a cultural or religious reason why they don't want to be around alcohol, they'll instantly be like, oh, I can't join that society because I can't go to that event. So just thinking about all aspects of your events in terms of like how it is inclusive or not. And obviously it's quite hard to cater for absolutely everyone with what's available, but it's quite an interesting thing to actually think about. It's not necessarily the fact that you don't shout about how inclusive you are. It's actually about what the core of your society is doing, and whether that shouts as being inclusive or whether that puts people off.
Yeah,
so that's quite interesting. Yeah,
there were some really good sessions actually. I think a lot of them have been recorded, so I'm gonna watch.
Yeah, I'm gonna watch through some of them. There were some that I missed, like the events one. I wanted to go to that one, but I forgot it was on. But I'm keen to see kind of the ideas that Rosie came up with, to see how kind of we can create a varied events program.
We'll make sure links to all of those recordings are up on the website as well, so anyone can access them. They should be freely available, or most of them should be freely available as soon as they go up.
I saw a session with Rosie and she said they're waiting for all of them to kind of get in one place so that they can edit them, and then they'll post them on Facebook, I think, so you can share the links. Doesn't look like there's any more questions. So do we want to wrap up here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm happy with that. I don't think there's anyone else planning on coming in at this point.
Cool. Well, thank you for coming along, and I hope you found answers to our questions useful. We'll be posting the recording on YouTube as usual and post it on the training website, so you can catch up on what we answered there. But have a good rest of your week. Bye.
Bye.